Hello, today we're going to be changing a rim on a 325 Ci BMW. We'll be going over some proper safety guidelines, such as knowing where to put the jack underneath the car, because it's very important that the car does not fall on you, because if it does, you could either get internal injuries or worse. To make sure that the jack is underneath the car properly, there is always a point where you can tell that the jack should be put on the car so it's safe. A jack like this, there is a bracket underneath the car that looks exactly like this, where you just place it up underneath. And then all you have to do is just start spinning it so it starts lifting up the car to get good ground clearance. What you also need is a lug nut wrench. This will help take off the lug nuts on your rim so you can start replacing your tire. You want to start loosening it first, but don't take the bolts off completely. You want to loosen it on a cross bolt pattern, which means you start at the top and then you go down and then you go left to right. You have to do it diagonally so it comes off good. And that will secure your car from bending the rim or it just falling off completely and damaging your car. So you want to start loosening your bolts first, and then getting the jack up underneath your car, and then as soon as all the bolts are loosened, you jack up the car, and then you start taking off the bolts. As soon as you start taking off the bolts, make sure that the car is sturdy and then the emergency brake is on. Because if the emergency brake is off, it'll roll back and it could harm you and fall on you. Make sure that when you jack up the car that it is high enough and the rim is off the ground. If the rim is not off the ground, then it could be harder to take off and then you won't be able to replace the spare tire. As soon as you get the rim off, you replace it with a new one, and then you start tightening the bolts in a cross bolt pattern again. And as soon as you get that done, you lower the car with the jack and then make sure that the tire is not wobbly or anything. And then as soon as you take the jack underneath the car, you take it out and then you start bolting the lug nuts back on, and make sure that it's also in a cross bolt pattern when you're putting it on so it doesn't become loose. Because when you're driving your car, you don't want the rim to bend or the bolts to break on you. And as soon as you're done, you can put everything back away, which all the items are usually found inside the trunk or underneath some back seats. But make sure that you have the exact bolt and lug nut wrench to work, because if not, then you won't be able to take off the lug nuts. And make sure that if it needs a key, that you have the key. Reasons why you want to learn how to do this is because if you're stuck on the road somewhere or in the dark and you have no way, if you don't have AAA or anything, you know how to change your tires so you can get to a safe point like a gas station so they can help put a new tire on. And it's always good to know that to change your tire, because there's not always going to be help around, and it's also usually universal for every car on how to take off a lug nut. And you'll be seeing a presentation soon with my friend the Stig, which is, well, just a guy in a helmet pretty much, and he's very secretive, but he'll be teaching you how to take it off visually. Alright, thank you. You'll see it soon. Here we have the Stig. We don't know where he comes from, but some here he comes from Germany. Auf Wiedersehen. Here we have the tire. We're going to unbolt the tire, show you how to change the rim. First, we have to jack it up a little bit using the jack stand, which will help secure the car and make sure it doesn't fall on you. By jacking it up, it also helps take off the rim by giving you good ground space. By taking off the bolts, we'll have to go in a cross-sectional pattern, as you see here. Just taking off bolts, and then as soon as he loosens one bolt, he goes diagonally. As you can see here, the Stig has successfully jacked up the car a good height to where the tire is not on the ground. And we have taken off all the bolts successfully, and now we're about to take off the rim. As we take off the rim, we readily put the rim back in the trunk and replace it with the spare. Okay, and we are now putting on the spare rim. You have to, when you're putting on the rim, you have to make sure the bolts line up so you can put the bolts back on it. And while putting the bolts back on, you have to put it on a cross-sectional pattern as to tighten it so the rim will be tightened completely. Here we have the wrench, and we are currently tightening it in a cross-bolt pattern to make sure that it's securely tight so the rim won't fall off. You don't have to tighten it completely, as when you put the car back on the ground and take out the jack, you'll be able to finally tighten it all the way. We have finally lowered the car completely, taken out the jack from underneath, and now securely tightening the bolts, again in cross-bolt pattern, so as to tighten it completely and make sure that it is secure and your rim won't fall off at high speeds and you crash. After you have securely put the rim back on, drive away, and if all else fails, call AAA with their lifesaver.